And we went to the actual mountain, and we landed on the mountain, and we did all of the tests that we could do. And I kept looking at him and saying, "Are you sure you can do this, Rick?" And he said, "Oh yes, I can do it."
Movie directors are masters of control. Every light, every word, every single camera angle is planned down to the second. But here's the catch. A lot of the most iconic moments in film history were never in the script at all. We're talking about pure unscripted accidents. We're going to reveal the real story behind a famous gangster's pet, but you won't believe the actor who almost experienced a real-life hanging, or the famous comedy scene that was actually pure unfiltered agony. What you thought was movie magic was actually just chaos. The parachute that waited. The James Bond franchise is famous for pushing the limits. But for the 1977 film The Spy Who Loved Me, the producers wanted something impossible. They wanted an opening that would make audiences gasp. The script called for James Bond to ski off a mountain and parachute to safety. It's not that simple, though. This wasn't a studio. This was the real world, and the studio was not happy about the cost. The location they chose was the terrifyingly beautiful Mount Asgard, a massive 3,000-foot tall peak in Canada. And the man they hired was stuntman Rick Sylvester. The producers, led by the legendary Cubby Broccoli, made a massive bet. They paid Sylvester $30,000 for this one stunt. That's the equivalent of over $140,000 today. Get this, it was the single most expensive stunt ever filmed at that time, and the production insurance barely covered it. The crew, including director Lewis Gilbert, had to be helicoptered to a narrow, icy ledge near the peak. They waited for days for the perfect weather, burning money the entire time. The crazy part is, the cliff wasn't even a sheer drop. It was a slope, meaning Sylvester had to ski at over 80 miles per hour just to clear the rocky edge below. He used specially modified extra-long skis to build up speed. They had multiple cameras running, but everyone knew this was a one-take-only deal. There was no backup, no second chance. Sylvester rocketed toward the edge and launched into the empty air. The crew watched in dead silence. He fell, and kept falling. The parachute, designed for a low-altitude jump, failed to open. What most people don't realize is that for several terrifying seconds, everyone thought they had just watched the stuntman plunge to his end. Finally, dangerously late, the chute deployed. The crew on the ledge erupted in cheers. But here's a wild theory some stunt coordinators have whispered about. Was the parachute's delay intentional? Think about it. A perfect, quick opening is safe, but it's not dramatic. A delayed chute, one that makes the audience think he's done for, is pure cinema. The crew insists it was a terrifying malfunction. But this was the 70s, stuntmen were a different breed. Is it possible Rick Sylvester, a master of his craft, knew exactly how long he could freefall to get the most heart-stopping shot possible, pushing the gear to its absolute limit? But a real stunt isn't always about bravery. Sometimes it's about pure, unfiltered terror. The scene that traumatized a generation. The opening scene of 1975's Jaws is legendary. It terrified an entire generation and made people afraid to go in the water. The scene shows a young woman named Chrissy getting pulled under by the unseen shark. Her performance was so convincing, her screams so real. Because they were real. Director Steven Spielberg wanted primal fear. He knew that acting scared just wouldn't be good enough. So, he hired a stunt woman named Susan Backlany for the part. He put her in a harness that was attached to a series of underwater cables, like a giant fishing line. These cables were operated by a team of men hidden on the beach, hundreds of feet away. But here's the catch. Spielberg didn't tell Backlany when they would pull her. He just gave the crew a signal. Give her a good tug. On the first take, the crew pulled the cable so violently that it fractured one of Backlany's ribs. Her blood-curdling screams of, "God help me," were not in the script. She was in genuine, agonizing pain and absolutely terrified, being thrashed around in the cold, dark water by a force she couldn't see. Spielberg, seeing this raw, unfiltered terror, just kept the cameras rolling. What most people don't realize is that the sound was also 100% authentic. They recorded her screams live. That awful, gurgling, choking sound that makes the scene so horrifying is the real noise of an actress fighting for air and screaming in real pain. This is where it gets dark. The official story is that the rig was unpredictable, but some film historians have a more chilling theory. Spielberg was a young, hungry director desperate for a hit. He knew this opening had to be perfect. Did he tell the crew to be extra violent on that first pull? Did he intentionally not tell Backlany to capture that raw, primal panic? He wasn't just filming a scene, he was creating a trauma. The line between unpredictable accident and intentional direction gets very, very blurry. Spielberg captured real fear, but our next director captured a moment of unexpected calm that completely defined a character. Brando's secret co-star. This is one of the most famous happy accidents in all of movie history. The opening scene of The Godfather introduces us to Vito Corleone. He's the most powerful, most feared man in New York, sitting in his dark office listening to a man beg him for a favor, and in his lap is a cat. That cat was never in the script. Director Francis Ford Coppola was walking through the Paramount studio lot on his way to the set and saw this gray and white stray cat just hanging out. Coppola, on an impulse, scooped up the cat, walked into the studio, and put it directly into Marlon Brando's lap right before they yelled, "Action." Brando, being a massive animal lover, didn't even flinch. He didn't ask questions. He just started petting the cat. The crazy part is, this one tiny accidental addition completely changed the scene. It created this brilliant, iconic contrast. Here is this ruthless mob boss, gently stroking a tiny animal. It instantly showed the two sides of his character: the tender family man and the cold-blooded operator. He's so in control of his world that he can be gentle and calm right before ordering a man's life to be ruined. The sound department, however, hated it. The cat immediately got comfortable and started purring. It was purring so loudly into Brando's lapel microphone that it muffled a lot of his lines. What most people don't realize is that much of Brando's dialogue in that iconic opening scene had to be re-recorded and dubbed in later. Coppola swears he just found the cat. But let's look at this. This is The Godfather, one of the most meticulously planned films ever. Is it really believable that on the most important day of shooting, the introduction of the main character, the director just found a stray and put it in the shot? A wilder theory suggests the cat was a plant. That Coppola, knowing Brando's love for animals and his unpredictable nature, put the cat there as a tool. He knew Brando would focus on the cat, not his lines, giving that distracted, powerful, "I'm too busy for you" vibe. It wasn't an accident. It was a masterful piece of actor wrangling. An unscripted pet is one thing, but what happens when an actor is in real physical danger? The take that went too far. In Back to the Future. Part 3. There's a dark scene where Marty McFly is almost hanged by Buford Mad Dog Tannen. That scene became terrifyingly real. And that's putting it lightly. Star Michael J. Fox was a perfectionist. He had always hated how fake hanging scenes looked in movies, where you can clearly see the actor standing on a box or a platform. He insisted to director Robert Zemeckis that he could make it look better. The plan was, for most of the shots, he'd stand on a box. But for the close-up, he would do it for real. The stunt team set up a system where he would put his fingers inside the noose, creating a small gap for air, and then hang by his hands for just a few seconds. They did this 6 times, and it looked okay. But Fox wasn't happy. He insisted on one more take without using his hands at all, just for a split second, to make the struggle look totally authentic. He miscalculated. The noose tightened for real. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't get his fingers in. He couldn't signal to the crew. He actually passed out. He was hanging there, unconscious, for over 30 seconds before the crew and Zemeckis realized he wasn't just giving the performance of his life. They frantically cut him down. He had genuinely blacked out. And that is the take you see in the final movie. But here's the theory people whisper about. Did Zemeckis, the director, know? He was watching the monitor. An actor acting unconscious and an actor being unconscious look different. Did he let it roll for an extra few seconds, caught between being a filmmaker who needed the shot and a human being who needed to save his friend? Fox recovered, but that moment was inches away from being a permanent tragedy. Fox literally passed out for his art, but our next star pulled off a trick that seemed like pure magic. Ripley's secret skill. During the filming of Alien Resurrection in 1997, the script called for a scene where Sigourney Weaver's character, the cloned Ripley, proves her new superhuman abilities. She's supposed to sink an impossible over-the-shoulder, behind-the-back basketball shot. The plan was simple: use special effects. The director, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, was going to either use a prop ball on a wire or just add the ball later with CGI. It was an impossible shot, but Sigourney Weaver said, "No, I can do this." The director didn't believe her for a second. He thought she was wasting valuable production time. But Weaver was serious. She began practicing. And practicing. She spent weeks training with a professional basketball coach. On the day of filming, the crew was set up and ready to move on. Her co-stars, Winona Ryder and Ron Perlman, were in the shot with her. The director figured they'd try it once, it would fail, and they'd move on to the CGI plan. Weaver threw the ball over her shoulder. Swish. Nothing but net. The ball went straight through the hoop from about 6 feet beyond the three-point line. The crew was silent, stunned. Then Ron Perlman completely broke character. He was so shocked he turned to the camera and yelled, "Oh my God!" His and Winona Ryder's stunned reactions are 100% genuine. They had just witnessed a 1 in a million shot, and the director kept it all in. But here's the wild theory. Was it really the first take? The story is too good. It's perfect Hollywood PR. The more likely, but less magical theory, is that Weaver practiced for weeks and they ran the take dozens of times. The take you see isn't the first take. It's just the one take where she finally made it. The shocked reactions from the cast were real, but they were probably shocked that she finally did it after so many attempts. A moment of triumph is great, but our next unscripted scene is one of Hollywood's most controversial. The line between art and assault. This one is intense. In Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds, there is a shocking scene where the character Bridget von Hammersmark, played by Diane Kruger, is choked by the villain Hans Landa, played by Christoph Waltz. Tarantino is obsessed with realism. He didn't think an actor pretending to constrict her airway would look authentic enough. He wanted the shot to show the real, ugly details of oxygen deprivation, the bulging eyes, the terror, the burst blood vessels in the face. So here's the deal. He told Kruger his plan. He said, "I'm going to do it, for real." On the day of filming, he got on top of the actress himself. He put his own hands around her neck and began to squeeze. To get the right angle, Christoph Waltz was standing right there, placing his own hands over Tarantino's. So on camera, it looked like he was the one doing it. But the pressure was all from the director. They filmed for several seconds as Tarantino genuinely constricted Kruger's airway. She later said the experience was absolutely terrifying and that she was in a place of no trust. It's a hugely controversial move. The wild theory here isn't what happened, but why. Tarantino is a film nerd. He knew about controversial similar methods used in old, obscure European films. Was this really for realism, or was it Tarantino trying to recreate a lost and dangerous form of filmmaking? Was he trying to own the controversy, to prove he's the one director who will go there? It wasn't about the shot. It was about his legacy as an outlaw filmmaker, and it's a line no one else would dare cross. From a dangerous physical moment to one of overwhelming, unscripted emotion. The cast's breakdown. This next one wasn't a physical accident, but it was one of the most raw and unscripted moments of emotion ever broadcast on television. In 2013, Glee actor Corey Monteith tragically passed away. The show's creators were faced with an impossible task: how to handle the loss of their main star. They decided to write an episode called The Quarterback to honor both the actor and his character, Finn Hudson. But here's the catch. It was less of a scripted episode and more of a filmed memorial. The director basically told the cast, "Whatever you feel in the moment, just let it out." What you see on screen is not acting the scene where the cast pounds on the memorial and breaks down. That was their real grief. Naya Rivera's collapse? 100% real. But the most intense and heartbreaking moment of all was when Leah Michelle, Monteith's real-life fiancée, appeared on screen to sing "Make You Feel My Love." She only did it in one take. She couldn't do it again. The tears streaming down her face, the way her voice shakes and breaks. That was a real person, grieving the love of her life, on camera for millions of people to see. The producers didn't direct her. They just filmed the moment. But this is where a dark theory emerges. The show was a machine, and it had to go on. Some critics argue the episode wasn't a tribute, but an exploitation of real grief. Was it ethical to put cameras on Lea Michele in her darkest moment? The wild theory is that the producers needed that raw emotion for ratings, to turn a real-life tragedy into a landmark, must-see television event. It blurred the line between tribute and trauma, from emotional peril to a high-stakes stunt that defied all logic. The pilot who did it anyway. Everyone's obsessed with the groundbreaking CGI in Terminator 2, Judgment Day. But the most unbelievable death-defying stunt in that movie was 100% real, and it was never supposed to happen. Or so the story goes. The script called for the evil T-1000, flying a helicopter, to chase John Connor's dirt bike under a freeway overpass. The film's producers and safety coordinators immediately said, "No way." It was impossible. Too dangerous. They told director James Cameron they would have to use models and miniatures. But here's the deal. Veteran stunt pilot Chuck Tamburo overheard the conversation and said, "I can do that." Cameron, who always pushes the envelope, believed him. They found a real functioning stretch of the Terminal Island Freeway in Long Beach, California. They couldn't even shut the whole thing down. Tamburo got in the helicopter. He flew it at over 60 miles per hour, chasing the motorcycle under the bridge. What most people don't realize is just how little room he had. He had only 5 feet of clearance between the tops of his rotor blades and the concrete ceiling, and only 13 feet between the landing gear and the road. One tiny updraft, one slight mistake, and it would have been a massive, fiery disaster. He nailed it twice to get the shot. The producers forbade it. But, did they? This is James Cameron, the man who sunk a full-scale Titanic. The wild theory is that the producers forbade it story is just part of the legend. That Cameron always planned to do it for real, and the official story was just legal cover in case it went horribly wrong. "We told him not to," would have been their defense. It was a calculated risk from the beginning, hidden behind a story of a rebellious pilot. That was intense, but our next scene is just intensely painful. The comedy of pain. The chest-waxing scene in The 40-Year-Old Virgin is a masterclass in comedic agony. It's so painfully hilarious because it's so real, and that's because it was. Star Steve Carell, in a moment of pure comedic genius or insanity, insisted on actually getting his chest waxed for the very first time on camera. He told director Judd Apatow that a real reaction would be funnier than anything he could act. And Carell, as it turns out, had a significant amount of chest hair. Apatow knew this was a one-shot deal. There were no second takes. He set up 5 cameras, 3 on Carell, 2 on the other actors, to capture every possible angle of the impending torture. The woman performing the waxing was not an actress. She was a real esthetician who had no idea what to make of the situation, which is why she looked so deadpan serious. The crazy part is, the other actors in the room, Seth Rogen, Paul Rudd, and Romany Malco, were also totally unscripted. Their only job was to react to what they saw. Their horrified faces, their cringing, and their hysterical, uncontrollable laughter are 100% genuine. They are just watching their friend endure actual agonizing pain for the sake of a joke. And the most iconic line? When Carell, in a fit of pure pain-induced panic, screams, "Ah, Kelly Clarkson!" That was not in the script. It was a completely random, nonsensical scream that came from a place of pure agony. But here's a wilder theory. Where did that name come from? The crew had a list of safe, non-swear words written on a cue card off camera, just in case. Was Kelly Clarkson, then famous for American Idol, at the top of that list as a random, absurd placeholder? Carell's genius wasn't inventing the name, but screaming it with such primal agony that it became legendary. Pain can be funny, but sometimes an unexpected laugh can change a whole movie. The unscripted defiance. The iconic police lineup in The Usual Suspects was written to be a moment of pure tension. It's the first time these 5 hardened criminals are brought together, and it's supposed to establish their dynamic of intimidation. They were supposed to stand there, dead serious, and read a line from a card. "Hand me the keys, you." Yeah, about that. That's not what happened. The actors, Kevin Pollak, Gabriel Byrne, Stephen Baldwin, Benicio del Toro, and Kevin Spacey, could not stop laughing. They tried. Take after take, they would just break. One would start giggling, and it would set off a chain reaction. Director Bryan Singer got furious. He was screaming at his A-list cast, trying desperately to get them to stick to the script. For years, the Hollywood legend was that Benicio del Toro, a known prankster, just kept farting on set, making everyone lose it. But here's the real deal, according to actor Kevin Pollak. While Del Toro had been farting all day, the real reason they were laughing was that the line, "Hand me the keys, you," just sounded ridiculous, and nobody could figure out how to pronounce the name Kaiser Soze correctly. But the real wild theory is that the actors intentionally sabotaged the scene. Gabriel Byrne, in particular, hated the movie and thought the script was nonsense. He was notoriously grumpy. The theory is that the laughter wasn't uncontrollable. It was a deliberate collective protest by the actors, a way of signaling to the young, cocky director, Singer, that they thought his serious scene was a joke. It backfired and became iconic, showing the group's defiance of the police. It showed they weren't intimidated. It showed they were already a team, from breaking character to breaking skin. DiCaprio's commitment. In Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, Leonardo DiCaprio delivered one of the most intense performances of his career as the brutal plantation owner, Calvin Candy. And it turns out, he paid for it in blood. The scene is the furious dinner table monologue, where Candy exposes the hero's plot. DiCaprio was deep in character, screaming and pounding the table. The script called for him to slam his hand down for emphasis. But in the heat of the moment, on one take, he brought his hand down with so much force that he smashed a real crystal glass that was on the table. The glass shattered, and a massive shard sliced his palm open. Blood immediately started gushing. Everyone on set froze. This was a major injury. But here's the catch. Leo didn't stop. He didn't break character. He didn't even look at his bleeding hand. He kept going with his menacing speech, now with real blood pouring down his arm. He even used the injury. He pointed his bloody hand, and then, in a moment of terrifying improvisation, he smeared his real blood all over the face of a terrified Kerry Washington. Her look of pure shock and horror is not acting. She is watching her co-star bleed profusely while staying in character. When Tarantino finally yelled, "Cut," the entire set erupted in a standing ovation. DiCaprio had to get several stitches. But here's the wild theory. Did he mean to do it? Leo is a method actor. He knew the scene needed to go to another level. The theory is, yes, maybe not the glass, but he meant to draw his own blood. He saw an opportunity, a prop, and took it. He needed Calvin Candy to be 100% unpredictable. What's more unpredictable than real, sudden violence? The accident was just plausible deniability for an act of pure, terrifying commitment. From a bloody hand to a shaved head, our next scene was just as real, but a lot more expensive. Scorsese's planted chaos. Martin Scorsese wanted the office party scenes in The Wolf of Wall Street to feel like the fall of Rome. Just pure, unfiltered chaos and debauchery. He hired hundreds of extras and basically told them to go wild. He wanted to capture the anything-goes atmosphere of Jordan Belfort's brokerage firm. And get this, one of the most memorable moments from those parties was completely real. In the middle of a roaring, crowded party scene, the camera finds a woman getting her head shaved right there on the trading floor, as dozens of cheering men surround her. This wasn't a scripted bit of action. This wasn't an actress with a wig. During the filming of the chaotic scene, one of the cast members, reports say it was one of the main actors, spontaneously offered an extra $700 in cash to let them shave her head right then and there. The extra immediately agreed. What most people don't realize is that this was just a spontaneous, crazy bet happening in the background. But Scorsese saw it, knew it was gold, and immediately swung the cameras over to capture it. The woman, a real-life extra, got her head shaved in front of 100 screaming people, all for $700 and a permanent spot in a Martin Scorsese movie. But was it really spontaneous, or was it planted by Scorsese? He loves chaotic, real energy. The wild theory is that he had an assistant director give an actor $700 and encourage them to make the offer, just to see what would happen. It's a classic, planned accident, a way to generate authentic chaos in a controlled environment. The spontaneous bet just makes for a better story. From crazy parties to a famously quirky TV show moment. The moment. Jen lost it. Remember the episode of Friends where Ross, in a misguided attempt to be unique, decides to play the bagpipes? The painfully awful screeching sound he produces is one of the show's most cringeworthy and hilarious moments. What makes it even funnier is that the sound was completely authentic. David Schwimmer didn't just pretend to be bad. He actually took lessons. He secretly learned to play the basics of the notoriously difficult instrument specifically for that one scene. He practiced just enough to play one song, Celebration, terribly. When they filmed the scene, he gave it his all. The resulting noise, that awful screeching sound, was 100% real. Lisa Kudrow, as Phoebe, was scripted to sing along, trying to match his chaotic noise. But here's the deal. Jennifer Aniston, as Rachel, wasn't scripted to laugh that hard. She found Schwimmer's earnest, terrible, and squeaking performance so genuinely hilarious that she could not keep a straight face. If you watch the scene, she is visibly shaking, trying to stifle her laughter. She even hides her face behind a pillow at one point. That wasn't Rachel acting. That was Jen laughing at Dave. But here's the wild theory. The producers knew Aniston was a giggler. She was famous for breaking character. The theory is that Schwimmer intentionally played it extra terribly in her eyeline, daring her to break. The scene wasn't just Phoebe sings with Ross. The real scene was, can we make Jen laugh? Her uncontrollable giggle was the intended punchline all along, and they just kept the take where she finally completely lost it. So, was it genius or just exploitation? Were these directors brilliant or just reckless? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.